On this special episode of The Naked Entrepreneur, rock legend and master of brand identity, Gene Simmons, shares his experiences with students from Ryerson University.
We have 5,000 licensed products, everything from Kiss condoms to Kiss caskets. Work is not a job. Work is a privilege. There's nothing that tastes as sweet as something you earn. If squirrels know what to do with their nuts, how come people don't? So we were poor. That's the greatest incentive for wanting to become rich.
The Naked Entrepreneur starts now. Born Chaim Witz on August 25, 1949 in Haifa, Israel, Gene Simmons first decided he wanted to be in a band while in middle school after watching girls scream at the Beatles on TV. Gene was in several bands before co-founding Kiss with Paul Stanley in the 1970s. Simmons later pursued interests in fashion, publishing, and acting, and starred in the A&E reality TV show Gene Simmons Family Jewels. Gene is now worth more than $300 million. Welcome to The Naked Entrepreneur. I'm Dr. Sean Wise from Ryerson University, and with me is one of my personal heroes, longtime idol. Most people know him as a rock and roller, but I know him as a genius entrepreneur. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our naked set, Gene Simmons.
Hiya. It's a pleasure to see me.
It is a pleasure to see you. I want to jump right in. In your new book, Me Inc., you talk a little bit about a concept, the inferred fiduciary duty of oneself. How one has to be self-reliant.
Everybody, all of you watching and listening will find this out. Sooner than later, you're going to have to find out what's out there. So we all learn about structure. Here's what it takes, here's how the corporate thing works, and here's how capitalism works and all that. But invariably, intrinsically, and really, it comes down to you. You have to figure out your business model, because what I need to get by isn't what the doctor needs to get by, may not be what you need to get by, but we all want more. We all think, I just need enough money to get by. Really? Tell you what you do. Any dollar you don't want, send to Gene Simmons. I'll give you my P.O. box number. I don't buy any of that new age crap. So you have an inferred fiduciary duty to yourself kind of means you have to learn people skills, language skills, have the right thing at the right place and the right time, and then luck and other variables. But as an example, if I lived in Paris and I wanted to be a country and western star, probably, even if I could sing in the best drawl and I have a cowboy hat, I may have the right thing. I'm in the wrong place. I got to be in Nashville. So that's a simple, very, very simple idea. And ultimately, it's going to come down to you. It's your responsibility to learn language skills, people skills, and then there's a lot of luck. And, you know, winners never quit. They just never do. You're going to get no all the time. You know, the guy with the prettiest girl, you go, boy, how does he always get girls? Well, guess what? He doesn't. He gets lots of no's. Difference between he and you, he keeps trying. And sooner or later, he gets it.
Where did you first learn to be so self-reliant? I mean, I know you quote in the book Ayn Rand and the philosophy of looking after yourself and being self-responsible. Where did you get it from?
Well, the doctor's talking about, let's not assume, the doctor's talking about a Jewish-Russian immigrant who came from Russia, naturally, and whose family were cut down by the Cossacks and other bad people in Russia and tried to get religious freedom. She came to America and wrote and had to learn English and had to do all this kind of stuff, and was fascinated by the idea that the government wasn't trying to kill her just because she was Jewish, and that even though she had a very thick Russian accent, the same opportunities were available to her as any native firstborn child of the United States and Canada, really, because they're brother, sister countries. Same opportunities exist in both. And so she espoused this kind of self philosophy. The idea being that it was her responsibility to learn how to speak the right way, at the right place. In other words, dress British, think Yiddish. And then she created this philosophy for herself and espoused it loudly of my responsibility. It's my responsibility to learn language skills, people skills, and I'm not going to look to the government to babysit with me, to pay. If I'm out of work, I need a check from the government. If I'm this and I'm that, the sort of social. So she was very anti-socialist and very, very capitalist. I, by the way, agree with that sentiment. But to answer your question, you can tell I love the sound of my own voice.
I love it too, so keep going.
Many people do.
Well, I would hope so. They're in the audience paying big money.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
So this inferred fiduciary duty, look, I had an advantage. I came to the United States as an immigrant myself with my mother, couldn't speak a word of English. I came from Israel. I know I don't look Swiss. See what I did there?
Mm-hmm.
And my mother spoke Hungarian, so we couldn't speak a word of it. But in a very short time, I realized that the better language skills I had and the better people skills I had, the more money I was making. That was the first key that would unlock the thing. And it took very little time for me to figure out that nobody was going to spoon feed me the next ladder on the climb to success. I'd have to do that for myself. So I continue to do that today. Look, I make a good living. I have this band. In fact, we leave tomorrow for the start of the European tour. We're playing stadiums and all this kind of stuff. A lot of people show up. They have a lot of money. We have 5,000 licensed products and everything from Kiss condoms to Kiss caskets. We'll get you coming and we'll get you going. Little pause there for them to. And we also own LA Kiss, the only football team of its kind in Los Angeles, a restaurant chain called Rock and Brews, and more things than you can shake
A stick?
a stick.
Yeah, a stick.
I thought it was going to be like a moose. Or
It could be a beaver.
if you go right here to Ryerson University, you will find tomorrow's talent. Right there, today. Go to the .com, which is
RyersonUniversity.ca or Ryerson.ca.
This has been a public service announcement.
Brought to you by Gene Simmons.
That's right.
Now, you talk about in the book, in particular, chapter 14.
Oh, you mean Me Inc. by Gene Simmons?
Me Inc., which is available at all fine retailers and even some not-so-fine retailers. You talk about approaching life...
Those are semantics, but he's not anti-semantic.
I'm not anti-semantic. You talk about approaching life as business, and I quote, "Business is life and your life is business." Is this your answer to work-life balance? To instead of try to have them separate, just have them as one and just be Gene Simmons?
Well, life doesn't care how you define it. It just is. And if you sit around during the day and do nothing, it costs you money. Every day, life costs money. Like the meter's always running. So either you're making more money, and there's something called inflation. Even if you have a Canadian dollar in your hand, by the end of the day, hypothetically and intrinsically and otherwise, that dollar will be worth less, which is to say you'll be able to buy less stuff for that dollar at the end of the day. That's called inflation. So it is incumbent upon you to keep ahead of the inflation level, to keep ahead of the taxes you'll have to pay, and to make more money than you'll need. Take a piece of advice from Mother Nature. You know what a squirrel is. And squirrels gorge themselves on the nuts that fall from the trees every year. And the nuts that they can't gorge themselves with, they literally hold like this and bring back, and then they bury them in different parts of the forest because they know somehow that there will be famine. In other words, when winter comes in, there are going to be no more nuts, but they'll have something to live on. So the question I have for everybody is, if squirrels know what to do with their nuts, how come people don't? See what I did there?
Coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
I fail every single day. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. 9,000. I've lost almost 300 games. It was right as the tsunami was starting when magazines were going out of business, male magazines.
All coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur. Now, most people know you as a superstar success.
A good-looking guy.
Good-looking guy, too. But you and I both understand that being an entrepreneur is as much about failure and how you deal with that as it is about success and how you deal with that. Can you tell me how you deal with failures? I know it's unheard of, but there are a few in your past, and what you've learned from them that our students and our audience can take away?
I fail every single day. I do. There's a wonderful quote. I hope I can find it. Do you have the Michael Jordan quote here? You got to listen to this. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. 9,000. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been tested to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that's why I succeed. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah. Because how else are you going to learn? We all failed. We were all babies in our diapers, and the first steps we took, we fell flat on our faces. But then the next time we tried, we learned a little bit better. And it's that process. I fail all the time.
Can you tell us about a recent failure and what you learned from it?
And sometimes it's not even in your control. Sometimes it's the people who are around you. The market will decide sometimes, look, you've got a nice product here, whatever it is, or a service, but right now we're just not interested in it.
Well, the Gene Simmons Tongue magazine. You entered the magazine world at the time everyone was running out of the magazine world.
That's right. I had a magazine that lasted 5 issues. The magazine was fine, just as good as any other.
Had great interviews in it.
Yeah, we had Richard Branson, Hugh Hefner, Donald Trump, like the top of the top guys who made them the most beautiful women. No nudity, but, it was sort of a male magazine. But it was right as the tsunami was starting where magazines were going out of business. Male magazines. Women's magazines continue to do well because when a woman buys a magazine, she buys 100! Never one.
We buy one and
we buy one. We go shopping, we buy a pair of shoes. You go shopping, you buy the shoe store.
You talked a little bit about the evolution from a young person to a more wise person. If you went back in your time machine and spoke to the 14-year-old Gene Simmons, what advice would you give him?
I have to tell you, in retrospect, I wouldn't have much to say because I started doing the right things really early on. At 12 years of age, as I was learning English and sort of American pop culture, comic books and movies and all that, and rock and roll, I desperately wanted to figure out a way to make money because my mother, my poor mother, our father left me when I was 7 years old, and that's not even unique, as shameful as it sounds. So my mother was working 12-hour days, 7 till 7, 6 days a week, by the way, and making half a penny a coat, sewing buttons and all that stuff. So I wanted to relieve her of that pressure. So I wanted to make money. So I started working right away at 12 years of age, rubbing the fat off of a butcher's block or delivering newspapers or whatever I could.
You talked a little bit about your 12-year-old self and your first venture in America. My research and your book talks about the 7-year-old you and Shlomo. Can you tell me about that first business? How does a 7-year-old get into agriculture? How do you even get into figuring out what people need at 7?
I didn't know anything, but if being observant is something of value, then I would pay attention to it, even before you know what you know and all that stuff. You're observant. So if you go to a ball game and you notice everybody's thirsty, goes, oh, I wish I had some, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out, gee, if I could sell them, because they want something, if I could sell them that thing that they want, I'd make money. And so when we lived in Israel, at the end of the day, people would come back from the buses at work and have to walk up the hill to this small town that we were living in, dirt roads. There wasn't anything to drink. We couldn't get involved in the drinking thing. Let's buy some sodas and waters and sell it to them because we didn't have any money. But we did have our hands. So we walked up, my friend and I, Shlomo Solomon, who was a Moroccan Jew. We were both 7 years old. We walked up to the hills of Mount Carmel. Yeah, the original one.
The biblical Mount Carmel.
Biblical Mount Carmel. Walked up those, it was a little hill, maybe 200 feet high at the most. And on top of that, there were cactus fruit. And so we picked the cactus fruit, which we loved anyway. And we got covered by the pricks from the cactus fruit and stuff. But as a kid, you don't care. And we hauled it down in a potato sack, which we got from the garbage pail someplace, and hauled all that down to the bus stop. And a kind grocer let us have a pail that he wasn't using, and he filled it with water and ice as a gift. And we put the cactus fruit in there. And at the end of the day, when everybody came from work and got off, they wanted something cool and something sugary and something thin. So we had the cactus fruit there, and what was then called a pruta, which is like the older version of the Israeli penny. We got the equivalent of something like $2 or $3 by today's standards, a small fortune by then at those standards. You got to remember a week's salary was something like $20, $30. So to get $2 to $3 was a big amount for a kid. So with that money, I think we gave something to the grocer. I bought my first ice cream cone in my life. Let me tell you something. There's nothing as sweet in the Old Testament and the New Testament, which my people wrote, by the sweat of thy brow. There is nothing that tastes as sweet as something you earn. I still remember that ice cream cone that I got in Israel, much creamier, much more sugar over there. They were less concerned about your waist then. I still remember there were cherry bits in it. I remember one was facing here like nothing. And I've had ice cream cones last week, can't remember what they were like. There was a cherry facing here and one facing up. And I remember I bit one, then I went to the top and bit that and ate from the bottom and up in the top because I liked the crunch. I remember all that. And then I took the remainder of the money, which might have been 2 cents for that ice cream cone. The remainder of that money I put on the table. When my mother came home, she said, "Where have you been?" and all this kind of stuff. Looked at the table, and I said, "Here's what we did all day," and all that stuff. And I'll never forget, my mother came over and, got all choked up, and she said, "My little man." I went, okay, that's what it is. You work hard all day, and you get the reward for it, and you get respect and the love of your mother and so on. That's I hope you can have an experience like that, because you'll never stop working. Even once you become rich like me, you'll get up at the crack of dawn. I was up at 5 a.m. We landed here in Toronto, 2 a.m. yesterday, flying from LA. And tomorrow I'm going to Berlin, and we're starting the European tour. Work is not a job. Work is a privilege. It's not a birthright. The love of labor. And even if you're sitting around on Sunday or Saturday doing nothing, you're an idiot. You want to know why? Because 365 days out of the year, let's see, how many days do we work? Not a lot, because if you take 2 days off of every weekend times 52 weeks, 104 days you're doing nothing, not making any money. Then you have Christmas. I forgot to tie my shoelaces day. Today in America's Memorial Day, and this day, and pregnancy leave, and Christmas and stuff. By the time you're done, you spend more days out of the year doing nothing, which costs money. Remember, there's also vacation. Oh yeah, that's a big one. What am I going to do on vacation? Spend money, after-tax money. So you hardly work at all. And how many hours in the daytime do you work? A fraction of the day. So if you like working, you'll have an advantage.
Coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
I've been able to luckily trademark the word motion. Therefore, I own motion pictures. So we were poor. That's the greatest incentive for wanting to become rich.
All coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur. Now we're gonna move to our final segment, the hot seat question, where they come rapid fire, and my producers gave me some sunglasses to think that I could keep up with you. I don't think that's the truth.
Do any of them involve farm animals?
No farm animals will be harmed in this segment.
Can I have your autograph?
I will be delighted. What's the best part about being an entrepreneur?
So even before I understood what the word meant, I had the hunger, the fire in the belly. And there's no greater sort of thing that makes you move forward as fast as hunger. So we were poor. That's the greatest incentive for wanting to become rich. If you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth and you have all the money in the world, what's your incentive for waking up? Well, if you are born rich, I would hope that the parents are going to keep tight reins and not let you have access to all that money, so you'll have to get up every day and go do something. Sophie, by the way, our daughter, has Sophie's Place, and it's not just for, celebrity and stuff. She raises money for it. Sophie Place is in Vancouver, right outside of Vancouver, and it treats thousands of abused kids, pregnant teens, and drugs and sexual abuse and all that stuff. So she actually gives back. She spent time in Ecuador, Vietnam, Albania or Romania, and lives with the families on little rat-infested boats on the river, not far from the Mekong Delta, where people used to fight each other and kill each other. I mean, down and dirty. She was born in Beverly Hills. You can't get more privileged than that. But both Nick and Sophie understand that there, but for the grace of God, they could have been in a poor place.
So if it's hunger that got you out of bed in the beginning, now that you have a magnificent family, as we see on TV, you have, according to public record, $300 million of net worth, you have 5,000 licensed products. What gets you out of bed today? What incentivizes you to put on your sunglasses and boots and keep going down this path?
In the same way that I remember what that ice cream cone tasted like, I still remember what the empty belly felt like, and I didn't like that. I'm sure somewhere not too far is this fear of, I hope I never get poor again.
And you think this fear is what motivates you even to this day?
Originally, it was my mother.
Mm-hmm.
At 14, she was in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. And our family was wiped out, and she escaped to Israel, and there we had nothing. I mean, there was a hole in the wall where rockets, and I'm sure I'll repeat some of this stuff when I speak shortly. The greatest incentive for working hard, especially for immigrants, is that they were dirt poor. You'll never forget that.
Never leaves you completely.
No.
Even if you have the mansion, even if you're on a European tour.
I have one truck. Yeah, there's a big house where everybody runs around. We have one housekeeper. Keep it simple. I don't have an assistant. I literally don't. I hate assistants. We fly commercial. I can buy the jet. So what? So we can stay on the tarmac while we're here like tomorrow. Most of the day we're going to be here, and so you're paying for parking. Not for me.
You've done so much in your first 60 some odd years. What's the next 40 hold for you?
Oh, I don't think I'll last 40, but that's okay. Look, every day there are new ventures, new something. I just launched 2 new film entertainment companies. One is called Erebus Pictures, which is a co-venture with the WWE. We're making horror movies, elevated horror movies, no slasher. First movie starts this summer called Temple, which is kind of like a computer supernatural kind of movie that'll scare the pants off you. And the second entity, I've been able to luckily trademark the word motion. Therefore, I own Motion Pictures.
Well, you've been a unique guest and you really shared a lot. I want to thank you on behalf of all those who are going to watch this. Ladies and gentlemen, the legend, Gene Simmons.
It's me.
To watch past episodes of our show or learn more about any of our guests, please visit www.nakedentrepreneur.tv.